Fantasy basketball waiver wire. We add the players, we drop the players. These are the guys that we need to pay attention to, including Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed. It's okay, Michael. I know you'd never be available on the waiver.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and public humiliation has never done nothing but molded me into the killer that you'll see today. And I never lack confidence. I never fear confrontation. I want all the smoke. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Do you ever wonder what adventure might be around the next corner? Well, take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go and find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. Go and double bang it. Get the audio version going, get the video version going. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you for the subscribes, and leave your comments down below. We're going to cover the waiver wire today. I've got around 50 names. Around 50 names that we're going to talk about in today's show, and I hope I cover nearly everyone we need to talk about. There's always going to be someone that pops up at some point that I didn't exactly cover, and I apologize for that. We do so many shows and so many things during the week that generally we do end up talking about everybody. But as we know, things change so quickly in the NBA. There's one bloke in particular that I cannot believe that we are going to talk about, but we are going to talk about him. And yeah, that's just the way things go sometimes in the NBA at this point in the season. I know there's a lot of us that are in playoffs, and playoffs are coming up, and a lot of us talking and complaining about the tanking, and it's been annoying. But realistically, it's the tanking stuff's probably been two guys, I would say. Larry Markkinen. Yes, that's annoying. And probably Jeremy Grant. All right, they're the only two I would sit and go, yeah, they're missing games for maybe not exactly straight up legit stuff. That's how I would view that. Everything else is just an unfortunate smash of injuries all happening at once. That's how I'm viewing that. But yes, I know it's frustrating. Let's go on. We're going to talk waiver wire because that's what we're here to do. And as we start these shows, we just look at guys who are must-roster players. And what I mean by that is we're looking over just the next couple of weeks. We're not exclusively looking at schedule here. We're looking at some short-term stuff for those of you in roto leagues, not battling in the playoffs this week, guys with buys, just more of an overall encompassing shorter-term view of players that we do need to look at. And I do believe that for categories, like I'm not going to go and give you a list of 20 different guys because there can be so much different stuff that goes on in terms of the way that we value players and the perfect guys that fit on our team for certain categories. So I just want to give you guys that I just think need to be rostered. Number one, I'm going to start with the speaker, Keontae George. Georgie is still 54% rostered. He has looked awesome. Came back from that illness. Yes, it was annoying, their schedule, and then he got sick, but they're going to start to get, and the schedule's still a bit rough, but they're going to start to get better at the end of this week. They got a back-to-back, I think Friday, Saturday, it is Utah. But he's doing so much at the moment. I don't expect that Larry Markkinen plays 50% of the remaining games, maybe even less than that. And George is going to get opportunities with big usage, big assist rate. There'll be efficiency issues, but at the moment there's not. He just has to be rostered. The next one is Nick Richards, because Mark Williams is not coming back. Richards should be on somebody's roster. It might be yours, it might not be, but there's a consistent, continual source of double-digit or close to double-digit points, rebounds, field goal percentage, and blocks. You can't really ask for much more. And the other guy I think that he should be rostering and is really a must-roster guy is Scoot Henderson. He returned yesterday. He was on a minutes limit. He played 26 minutes. He's going to push himself into it, unless he gets hurt again, into a 33-minute, 34-minute a night role. He's going to have it. I don't know when this is going to come, but in a week maybe, he'll start to have the lead usage role, the lead playmaking role. And I think he'll put up, especially like even for 4 points leagues as well, for category leagues, he'll start to put up top 75 numbers, I would guess. I would not be leaving Scoot Henderson at this point on the waiver wire. I get the hesitance, but I would not be doing it. For points leagues, I can extend this list a little bit further in points leagues because we don't have the fit problems. We don't have the this guy makes sense on this team situation because it's like if a guy gets more fantasy points, then he fits. I've got Keontae. I've got Scoot, who's still 48%. I've got Dracarys Levert, who has value at the moment in category leagues while Mitchell is out and while Mobley is out. In points leagues, his value sustains a little bit more in those formats when players return, but in category leagues, it doesn't. That's why I didn't include him there. But Caris LeVert's here. Amen Thompson, I think in points leagues is worth looking at. I think he's probably worth a crack in category leagues. I'm a little less confident because of the way that he can damage at percentages and maybe he goes back to some usage issues. But last game, we saw Amen really step it up and we know what he can do. And I just like to be a little bit on top of that, especially for points leagues. We've got more margin for error. I do have Kyle Anderson there as well, who, yes, they've only got 2 games this week, and that's why I'm talking about a longer view of things with Kyle Anderson, because the Wolves have 6 games over the next 2 weeks, and that's basically the same. Look, teams are either like 8, 7, 6 over the next 2 weeks. So it's not that big of a difference. And yes, it is frustrating having the only 2 games this week, but in category leagues, he's probably worth it, but it's not for everybody. In points leagues, I think he does enough to make that list. And the same with Grant Williams. With absences still in Charlotte, we don't really know when a bunch of their guys return or if they return at all. Grant is in that mix. Now, the last 3 names that are Amen, Kyle, and Grant are a little bit iffy to me. I don't have them projected as top 100 guys. They're like top 110, 115 players, which usually I like to look at top 100 guys as must roster. So Amen and Kyle and Grant, they push down a little bit further. So just adjust that when you're considering what you're doing with your team and who you're adding and who you're not adding, because we do have to take that stuff into consideration. What about guys who are droppable?
Get that garbage out of here!
Who are players that sit on a significant chunk of rosters who possibly shouldn't? Now, as usual, you don't have to drop these guys. But if they sit on your roster and you need to make changes, you need to take flyers, you need to take swings, we can consider that. I've got Bojan Bogdanovic there. We're guessing that OG Anunoby's back pretty soon, but with Jalen Brunson back, we saw Bojan barely play last game, and that's enough. You just get rid of him. I've got Andy Wiggins there. Wiggins moved to the bench last game for Trace Jackson-Davis. They did change the starting lineup at halftime, and it was Klay Thompson who started, not Wiggins. But Wiggins' production, he's been bad. He had a stretch of being solid, and I'm just not confident in the way the minutes are going at the moment. So again, if you wanted to move on, you move on. Same goes with PJ Washington. He needs 35 minutes plus for me to feel confident that he's a must-roster player. I'm not saying that you have to drop PJ, but recently the minutes are back to like 31, 29, and that's not enough for him to be locked onto every roster. I've got Wendell Carter Jr. there as well. He needs 29, and he doesn't get it every game. He's totally fine to roster. He's totally fine to use. But when you look at your roster, is he an untouchable? Like, I don't think he should be. Jaden Ivey. This is specific to category leagues. Ivey, I do think Ivey is quite a good player. I love his ability to score. I like his speed. I like his assist numbers. But his deficiencies in defensive stats, his deficiencies in field goals and free throws in category leagues is hard. For some of you, it will make perfect sense. For others, it won't. And that's why when I say droppable, it just means he does not have to be on a category league roster. He can be. He doesn't have to be. In points leagues, I think he has to be. Category leagues, I don't think so. And then we've got the last trio there, Jakob Poeltl, Karl Anthony Towns, Scotty Barnes. People are still asking me, hey, can I go ahead and is it okay to drop Poeltl? Like, yes. Barnes, yes. Towns, yes. Brogdon, yes. LaMelo Ball, iffy. Maybe. Randall, And I would say if you are in the playoffs and it's getting desperation, that Ball and Randall probably do become droppable. But I have no compunction with saying Poeltl and Barnes. They can be jacked. There is zero chance that those guys are returning in my mind. Points league droppable players. We do have Bojan Bogdanovic on that list still. Grayson Allen is a category must-hold, but not a must-roster points guy, especially with Booker returning. Andy Wiggins is there. I've got Trey Jones, who's still 71% rostered. His assist numbers have been good the last 2 games, but usage is down. Points format is just not as good as category leagues. They're sort of jerking minutes up and down with him, and I just don't feel confident to say that he's going to be this locked-in top 100 points league player rest of season. I've got Mike Conley on the list as well. Much better category league player than points league guy, the same as Trey Jones. And if I tie the schedule part of it in here, there's absolutely zero chance that you hold Mike Conley this week. With 2 games, you just don't do it. Very easy drop. And then, of course, the Poeltl, Towns, and Barnes combination. I don't see those guys playing. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things further? Do you ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Well, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. The Nissan incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. It has room for up to 8 and expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds of towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So, take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go and find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Okay, let's do the next part of this show, and we're looking at the guys who have been added the most across our different metrics that we can track here. The number one most added player is Rashawn Holmes over the last 48 hours, and then unfortunately, Holmesy popped up on the injury report today as questionable, which is absolutely not ideal. He's got a big toe sprain. It's the right move to have added Holmes, given what happened last game, given the Wizards' schedule, given they got 5 games in, I think, 7 nights coming up, or 5 games in 8 nights coming up, but that is a brutal blow if Holmes does not play. Who the hell would have to be Eugene Marie, who gets center minutes, and then you're talking about Corey Kirsper getting more run. The second guy on this list is Delano Banton, who I don't think is a very good player, honestly. And I didn't really even talk about him in the streaming shows because I just don't really know how to project him. Because go look, I think it was 3 games ago, he played 9 minutes. And then he's played gigantic minutes the last 2 games. Now, he has got a game that is very similar to Karis LeVert, to Russell Westbrook. I'm not saying he's Russell Westbrook, but fantasy skill set. Shocking field goals, shocking free throws. Points, rebounds, assists. And you can rack them up. Now, he has shot I think 40% from 3 over the last 3 games, which has boosted his numbers. He's playing big minutes. This Blazers team is so hard to figure out what's going on because last game there was no Jeremy Grant. Last game, Scoot Henderson was in low minutes. Last game, there was no Jabari Walker. So, Banton played huge minutes, even with Scoot back. But when Grant returned, does Chris Murray go to the bench, who played 24 minutes last game? Does Kamara go to the bench? Does Banton go to the bench? Does Banton and Scoot share the ball coming off the bench? None of that stuff seems to make any sense to me that that's what they would do. But Banton put up good numbers. Now, I guess the positive side you look at that is that you don't think Simons and Grant are going to play out the season, and I don't. I don't know when it's going to stop. And Banton puts up good counting stats, but he's almost the Abaji to me. Why are you taking so many shots? I don't think you're very good. And for Abaji, that worked out perfectly in my assessment because he's bad, and the Raptors figure that out immediately. Yes, they are starting him, but he plays 20 minutes, he doesn't touch it anymore. All right, so that was I was right on that. I have the same thoughts on Banton. Maybe I'm going to be wrong, though. But again, when we try to play the 240 game, it's almost impossible with this team to figure out where the minutes lie. And that's what it makes it hard to project out. Because if I project out that Grant and Thibault and Walker and Simons and Scoot and Ayton all play next game, this boy gets 21 minutes and he's useless. But they sit somebody every single game, and then he's on a hot streak shooting, and it's all sort of coming together for Banton. So I don't mind if you add in. They've got a really good schedule coming up. I'm just skeptical. And Malachi Branham, one of the most added players. Malachi Branham is putting up huge numbers at the moment. It's awesome. We talked about him earlier in the week saying, hey, there's been some real trends here. He's scoring really well. And one of the things happened that I talk about all the time. And I think this guy listens to the show. I'll talk about him in a second. But when you start to see production hit team blogs and then into mainstream media, that's when you know, oh no, there's going to be a regression. And Noah Magaro George, who covers the Spurs, tweeted out yesterday, said Malachi Branham has averaged 15.4 points on 51, 60, and 95 shooting splits over his last 10 games. All right. So I quote tweeted and said, look, he's been great. These are great numbers, but you fantasy guys know what we're taking out of this, right? Once we start tweeting out his production and you see a 60 in the 3-point percentage column, as well as 95 from the line, you know what's going to happen. You know how this is going to go. And Noah replied, yeah, that shooting's 100% unsustainable. Yeah, it is, Noah. So I don't know if you've been listening to this show or not. I'm talking about it, but Branham's been on fire, and it's very easy to get caught up in saying, well, look at me, he's just getting 20 points a game. Yeah, because every single shot is going in. And at the moment, we can roll with that. But if they don't go in, he's not going to do any of this stuff. So it's okay to chase it. It's okay to grab it. It's okay to run with the hot streak. But that hot streak won't last. George Niang, one of the most added players. Fair enough. He's been on fire as well. Still no Struce, still no Mitchell, still no Mobley. They've got a 3 games in 4 nights starting Sunday. He's a pretty good ad in that spot. Jaime Jaquez, up almost 5,900 ads. He's still 41% rostered. That, to me, is pure chasing from last game. He was great last game. Shot 80%, I think, or 77%. I guess we ignore every other game before that for the last 2 months where he was not remotely close to a 12-team league guy, and everyone just added after that last one. I would not have done that. And then Amen Thompson is up almost 5,000 ads. Again, he was great last game. I have a little bit more confidence in Amen being able to produce value at 24 minutes a night than I do with Jaquez at 27. But that's very big chasing there with Jaquez, Amen, and Yang. I guess the only thing I'd say is that they play Sunday, so people added them for that purpose.
Get that garbage out of here!
All right, so who has been dropped? Number 1 there is Trey Mann, down 19%. Groin injury, missed the last 2 games. Not sure how long that's going to last. Maybe he's back in the next 2 or 3. No problem dropping Trey Mann. All right, you got to make cutthroat decisions. A guy that was out, you have to move on. That's okay. Dwop Reith down at 19%. Some might call him Drop Reith. Ayo. I get it. Ayton returned. He did nothing. This is one of those ones that's a tough one to pass through because if you need immediately everyday production, you have to drop him. You have to because he's going to play 15 minutes a night, maybe. And that's not useful. If your playoffs start week 21, God forbid, but if they start week 21 and you're okay in the playoffs, you absolutely hold him. Because I don't think there's any way that DeAndre Ayton is playing through that time. But I don't know. So at the moment, Reith is useless. But it might be 3 more games and Reith becomes a must-roster player again. That's going to depend on you. Ben Mathurin down 18%. I should have included him earlier in terms of guys that are droppable because they're out for the season, because he is out for the season. He was droppable anyway, but he's out for the season. Royce O'Neal's been dropped in a lot of spots. Shot poorly last game. Another one of those. It's the reverse chasing. It's like, man, he shot 11%. If I drop him now, do those numbers come off my team? No, they don't. But I would be... Look, he's okay. If you've got to make the decision to move on, I get that. Booker's going to return. I would have probably liked to hold 1 more game to see what happens with O'Neal and what his minutes look like when they're fully healthy, but I do get that. Andre Drummond is now back to being exclusively a backup center with Torrey Craig back. They're not crossing him over with Vooch at all. And that 1 remaining Twin Towers game on the lineup, on the schedule remaining, which was 31st of March against Minnesota, well, that doesn't exist anymore because you're not going to have Towns and Gobert playing together. So, yeah, Drummond gone. See ya. And Asar Thompson, that's a bit weird to me. 67% rostered still Asar, but he's down almost 2,000 teams because he got sick last game. I guess people are going, hey, I just need someone to add in here for my game tomorrow. And Asar didn't play. But I also saw many comments of people complaining about Asar Thompson and saying, oh man, what happened? I've got to get rid of him. Like, this is terrible, without looking into why he left the game or why his minutes were low. He was sick, and he's not on the injury report for their next game. So that one feels maybe a little hasty. I think that might have been some people who made that drop without really looking as to what happened in the previous game. Today's episode is also brought to you by LinkedIn. When you are hiring for your small business, you want to find qualified candidates that are right for the role, and you want to find them fast. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has all of the tools that you need to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of over 1 billion professionals that you have access to. You can't get access to this level of professionals at any other job site. That is why LinkedIn does all of that, and they make that process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you get all the right candidates put in front of you. It's so easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That is linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Okay. What are we going to look at next? Let's take a look at some hot players.
Happy birthday.
These are guys who have been in the top 100 over the last week. And again, I teased this at the start of the show. I cannot believe that I'm talking about Chris Boucher. I can't believe it. But I am. And you should add him. I can't believe it, but you should add him. He has screwed us many, many times. He is playing 20-plus minutes off the bench. He was unbelievable in that game against Portland. He is 4% rostered. And I don't want to go as far as to call him a must-roster player, but it's right there, man. Like, he could blow up in the wrong direction, like explode, detonate, disappear in the wrong direction, smithereens, real quickly. But yeah, we got to do it. I think we got to do it. I don't want to say it, but I think we do. Luke Kennard's been in the top 100. If you can trust Memphis, then you're doing a better job than me. He is not going to play every game. Watch old mate DeJon Jarreau start. Yes, that is a real player who is signed. He will get some games because now Jordan Goodwin's dealing with an Achilles issue. When Kennard plays, he's totally fine, but we don't know when he's going to play. Najee Marshall's been in the top 100. Cool. That's great. I don't really care. Santi Aldama's been in the top 100. He is putting up really good numbers at the moment. It's taken us 4 months to get here. I have resisted saying that he should be rostered because, I've been right up until now. And now is the time we do it. Simone Fontecchio was great last game. He went bananas with Asar being out. So he's a top 100 player. He is a points and 3 specialist. We know this. He's going to be up and down with shot attempts and all that sort of stuff. He should be getting every minute that Isaiah Stewart plays at power forward, but, Monty. So when Troy Weaver's not out there fighting fans, we've got decisions that he needs to make about what needs to be prioritized. Well, by the way, shout out to Cade Cunningham, who is dominating at the moment. I know a lot of you laughed at me when I said there is an outside chance that Cade could be a first-round player this year, and I feel good about taking him in the 3rd round. I know a lot of people laughed at that. He's pretty good, yeah? Or maybe you don't agree. That's fine. He's good. Simone Fontecchio. Don't mind it. And then Tamani Kamara's been top 100 over the last week. I don't know how to feel about him. I feel like his role is secure, but he also feels incredibly low upside. Like he'll score 10 points, he'll have 7 rebounds, he'll get a steal with 2 assists. And you go, okay. He's like a worse passing Kyle Anderson. But that team can blow up rotations any game. And I think he's going to stay relatively consistent, Kamara. So I don't hate the ad. He's a definite 14-team league guy, Tamani. And I love how he actually plays on court. But I think the upside there for fantasy is not super, super high, is how I'll phrase that. Let's look at some injury replacement players. There's obviously crossover in a lot of these categories with stuff that we talk about. But these are guys who are getting a real benefit with players out. And number one on that list is Bryce Sensabaugh. Sensabaugh has been very strong. I've been very impressed with what he does. I do think that he's a future starter in the NBA and a future top 80 fantasy player at some point. He's replacing Lauri Markkanen, though. So if Markkanen ever returns, and I honestly don't know whether that will happen, then Sensabaugh will go back to doing nothing. And then you get into that crowded spot where there's Sensabaugh, there's Markkanen, there's Clarkson, there's Sexton, there's George. There's minutes of done. But I would be absolutely staggered if the Jazz do not prioritize Sensabaugh's minutes down the stretch here. The Jazz are in a pretty weak part of the schedule. We know that in terms of games played, it's pretty low. But it will improve. So if you are got an ability to sit on something, I'm not going to tell you to sit on Dick. I'm going to tell you to sit on Bryce Sensabaugh because there's something there. Vasily Micic is still 25% rostered. No Man, no Martin, no Curry, no Ball. Just got to be rostered. Duncan Robinson replacing Tyler Hero. Just roll with him until Hero returns at least. Jakey LaRavia. Yeah, the Grizzlies, we know. It's the Grizzlies. We know the problems. But LaRavia, putting up big numbers. He had great numbers in college. And we actually are starting to see them translate into the NBA. So Jake should be on 12-team rosters. I've got Julian Champagny there, who was excellent last game. It was him and Dom Barlow getting a victory over the Warriors, who, by the way, I like a lot as well. Now, obviously, there was no Wemby and no Vassell, the 2 best players for the Spurs are out, and it does look like both of those guys will be back on Monday. But if Vassell remains sidelined, we just keep that eye on Champagny, because Bubbles did this last season as well. At the end of the year, they put the ball in his hands, and he delivered. And I think if it happens again, he will deliver again. I've also got double-cheeked up legend Kyle Lowry on this list. With Maxey out, with Melton out, Lowry is getting strong minutes and strong production. And as long as those 2 things remain the same, Melton and Maxey out, Lowry is a 12-team league player. We can adjust what happens when those guys return, but at the moment, that's where we're at. Let's go through now to some other names, just some guys that deserve a discussion to wrap up this waiver wire show. Number 1 on this list is Isaac Okoro, who There was who was I just talking about before in terms of having low upside? I don't know. There was Tamani Kamara. As Okoro's very much like that now. Okoro's improved a lot this season in year 4. His shooting's improved. He's more reliable. He's more confident in taking the shot, which is huge as well. And with Mitchell out, he's playing this larger role. And I think probably at this point, we do roster him. I don't see that lasting long term, but for now, we're into it. Dan Gafford. Is the big fella back on the menu? Like he is a little bit, yes. But it is also worth remembering. Last game, Derek Lively was out. Gafford was great and still played 24 minutes. Now, he is starting over Lively, but is 20 minutes of Gafford enough? I would argue that it's probably 2 to 3 minutes not enough. But for now, we roll with him. We see what happens. We see if Lively returns, when he returns, and how they run that rotation. But I'm not 100% convinced on that. Storm and Norman Powell, still 52% available. The Clippers have an unbelievably packed schedule. We've already seen Paul George and Kawhi. They're sitting on Sunday. I talked about that over on Basketball Monster yesterday, labeled them as questionable in advance to say that I don't think they're going to play. And Powell is going to step up, and they've got a really packed schedule here. I'm going to put the Prestige Penis on here, grade A Dick. He started last game when Rowan Barrett was a late scratch. He did not play particularly well, but he still played 36 minutes. He was replaced at halftime by Javon Freeman Liberty, which is weird. But he played a lot of minutes. The shot's just not going in for Dick at the moment. I do think we are going to get 30 minutes consistently from grade A as we move forward. And that would mean that I would want him on my 12-teamer. At the moment, it's very borderline. He's a points and threes guy in the Fontecchio mold, and things just aren't fully clicking at the moment. And that's okay. But he is worth mentioning. Jabari Walker I've got here is injured at the moment. Just another name to add into the mix. If Jeremy Grant's hamstring keeps him out for the rest of the year, probably. Who knows? I don't know what that team does. But Walker has had fleeting moments. And I think that's going to be almost the definition of this team, fleeting moments. He'll have a moment, again, where he plays 35. He'll put together 5 strong games, and then he'll get injured. And then bloody Chris Murray will start at power forward, or they'll bring Justin Manea in, or they'll bring some other random bloke in from the G League to play 10 games here, and then switch someone else out. But Walker's just someone to have an eye on. If he's back next game, he literally might start. But he might not. And the last guy on that list is Cam Whitmore, who is showing tons of offensive skill. He's scoring at will. If he played 30 minutes a night, he'd be a very clear, minimum top 70 player. But the path to that isn't there. But if it does get there, like if Jabari gets hurt, or if Brooks gets benched or whatever, I think a men would probably move in. But there is opportunities here for Whitmore. And at the moment, he's giving you just enough in terms of scoring and in terms of threes to be useful, because that usage is absolutely sky high at this point. And that is about 50 different names that we discussed here for the waiver wire. I'm sure there is somebody that I missed or that didn't sort of fit into the categories that I was covering here. So drop that player down in the comments below and we can have a chat about it. I can respond to it. Other people can jump in as well. But also, don't forget to hit that thumb up, ring the bell, and leave all of those other comments down below also. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.